So, this is episode 3, and this is all about communicating those dreams. In the last few episodes, we talked about that in between stage where you're in a corporate job and you feel like there's something more out there for you, but you're doing really well at what you're doing. And do you jump ship and follow those dreams, or do you stay still? And it's that sort of no man's land where you're just sitting there and almost paralyzed by that fear. So, Alma, any thoughts on this next stage once you've made the decision? What are your immediate thoughts?
Yeah, gosh. Hey everyone, Alma here. And one of the things that I find is always scary for women specifically, as they make the decision, after they made the decision to go all in. And again, just to kind of recap our last conversation, going all in doesn't mean all or nothing, right?
Mm,
It just means you're
that's right.
committed to this and you're going for it.
That's
Doesn't
right.
mean you have to drop everything else that you're doing, but you are in on this dream. You're not dabbling in other dreams. It's really
Mm.
communicating this and making this decision clear to everybody whose support you're seeking.
Yeah, because that's the important thing, and it's really deciding. It's the decision of communicating your dreams. So it's that decision of I'm going to stay put, or I'm going to go ahead, and I'm really going to follow this passion that I have, or whatever it is that you want to do. But how do you make loved ones understand your decision? Because obviously, we talked in the last episode about how you come to that decision, and just getting yourself to that decision can be so huge. How do you then uh, convince your loved ones to understand the vision, particularly if as it probably will impact maybe their finances, the stability of your relationship, how much time you will spend at home, all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is, I think, Rachana, the pretty much the most important piece,
Mm,
right? Because we need to have support of others. We're not meant to be alone, right?
right.
And if we have our loved ones in our life that we want to continue to have a relationship with, we need their buy-in on this.
Mm.
I'm not talking about coming from that neediness, but more of, hey, I want to do this and I want to ensure you that your support is important to me and that I don't take it for granted.
So what? Yeah, on that point, because I know that it's different in different situations, but there are many people that will test the waters with their partners, and they'll drop little hints, and the feedback isn't always positive. Okay, I have a friend in particular, and her husband loves to cook, and it's really, he's very passionate about it, but she will firmly say it's not his job. And so, there is that can obviously have a big impact, because okay, you may have decided this is the way you want to go, but that person, that relationship is integral in your success.
For sure.
If you don't have that support, it's going to be a really lonely path. So, speaking their language and really getting them to get on board, that's the biggest hurdle for many people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think personally, it's so much easier for me to say this, right, than for you to do it,
Yeah.
you as the listener. But the most effective way to actually get their buy-in is to speak their language, like you said, right? Meet them where they are. In other words, listen to their objections, right? But like your friend here, if her husband loves to cook and is really passionate about it, and she says, but it's not his job, where's she coming from, right? It's most likely some sort of fear,
Right.
right? So understanding that your partner, for example, or your spouse, whose ever support you're seeking, has certain fears. And sure, fears are irrational, but to them they're very much real.
Yeah.
So if you speak to it and say, let's say, you know what, I really want to do this. I want to go in on this. Want your support. Your support is invaluable to me. It's the one thing that matters more to me than any other
Hmm.
thing, really expressing how much you value the relationship. And I know that you may be afraid of how much time I'm going to be spending on this and how much time it's going to be taken away from you, our relationship or our family. Understanding that that's really what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
It's addressing those objections,
Yeah.
right? And then they immediately, it's almost like they don't have a choice but to say, I feel
Yeah.
seen, I feel heard, right?
That's right. And addressing those up front. So almost like thinking that through. I think that's really great. And when you're speaking to them, obviously speaking to their fears, but also speaking to the benefit that this will bring as well, like understanding that this there will be a transitional phase, but the benefit, the upside of this is huge. And speaking to that side can also help your case. And again, it does come from fear, and it's grounded in certain situations. It is very valid. It's not like you should dismiss those fears, and that's why a lot of people are stuck in this no man land, because they're struggling between respect and that emotional conflict. So I
Yeah,
know it's tough.
you're right, but
Sorry. I think it's also key to be calm, because I think when we've decided to do something, when you're really emotionally charged, that's great. But when you go, well, certainly when I go off on a tangent, I'm so emotionally charged that it can be too much for the other person. Yes, it's a great thing. I've decided, and la la la. But you've got to give the other person time to just absorb it. So try and keep it calm.
absolutely. And not, I know we're kind of playing it safe here as we're talking, but I think, Rachana, for both of us, we're kind of speaking from experience. You got to let them know that this will not change your relationship. Because that's really what most people are afraid of. Will this change our relationship? Will you be more interested in the other activities or the other people you're doing this with than you are in our
Right,
relationship? Right?
right, right. And I think that's key, and you have to be able to do that, Alma. There's one thing saying it, and there's another thing when you deliver on it. And
Mm-hmm.
there are plenty of circumstances where that hasn't been the case. So that's obviously a fear. So really, really, I mean, we both come from this point, but when you do say something like that, mean it. Really put them up on your list. Make sure that you're not going back on your word. Okay, because
Mm-hmm.
the chances are you'll have many, many, many situations where you'll have to pivot, where you may fail at things and you will move. And so that's when you're going to need that support network the most. And if you're ignoring and not really being there for them, they're not going to be there for you either. So that's just a key point in my book.
Absolutely. And in getting them involved in the process, right? It's, hey, look what we started. Look where I'm going. I'd like your input on this. I'd like for you to come with me and see the process and the progress, and just really getting them involved so they know that they're not left behind.
Yeah.
I can't tell you, Rachana, how many times with entrepreneurial families or individuals who have families, my own family included,
Mm,
how many times I've witnessed where the other person is left behind because of one person's excitement.
right.
And it just backfires because we end up in that either or place.
Hmm.
It's either this or that. And most people will give up their dream just to keep a relationship, and everybody loses.
Right. Because that relationship is damaged. Yeah, and
Exactly.
it's not an easy task. But yes, open, honest conversations, and with that communication, ask for what you want, because yes, having that open conversation, but you really have to go that next level, which you and I have spoken about. And if that means financially asking for what you need, that's often a tricky thing to ask, especially when you feel like you're taking away from the family. And so have those conversations up front. What specific support do you need?
Mhm.
What specific support does your partner or whoever else need? What emotional support do they need? Like, really be very candid about that stuff, because you're going to continue to have those conversations. They are always moving parts. But I think we err away, especially as women, with the finances. We're more likely to go, that's a silly idea. I'm not going to take that. I mean, how many of us buy for our children, and there's something that you've been looking at for the last 6 months or a year or whatever, and you're like, this is something I really want, but you don't buy for yourself, you give. And so there is that element of, oh gosh, am I taking from them, am I taking from my loved ones, and am I being foolish? Because there's no guarantee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think, Rachana? How would you handle that finance piece? Because that is probably top in the top two, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, before I even go into it, I would have a really good plan. I would actually give my spouse or my partner a timeline, so that we're all on the same page. And I'd say, listen, if I don't get to this, support me through this, and I will use this much of I will require this much in terms of investment. But if I don't make it to, I don't know, year one, year two to this, then let's reevaluate. Let's, but I want to give this a shot. So I'd put a timeline on it, and that's certainly a conversation that I've had with my spouse. I
Yeah.
think that alleviates some of the stress, because the other person also knows that you're not just going to run them into the ground. Yes, you're going to be focused, and this is for a finite time. And in that finite time, if you achieve X, yes, great, let's go on. We'll go on with less fear, with less anxiety, but I think that time is important. And then understanding your finances, like, what do you realistically have to invest? And if you haven't, let's be creative about this. How do you raise the funds? There are lots of other options. You don't have to fully fund something. I think that's the big mistake that many business owners make, is that they feel like they have to fully fund something. There are so many ways of getting finance collaboratively. Is there someone who will invest in you? I mean, depending on the idea, is there someone that you could perhaps align with, certainly at the start of this? Or what can you do? Who can you surround yourself with to make sure that you're not starting from rock bottom, that you have that mentorship that can get you in there and get you the results? So those are all different areas that, it's preparation. It's like anything, it's good preparation. And as much preparation as we have, Alma, we all know that ultimately it's you. It's all down to you, right? And so you can be prepared and do all this stuff, but you have to go out there and be present and be front and just there, and in your business and at home, which is a dual task in itself. But yeah, I think good prep, I would
Good
say.
prep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that, because if you, what is that saying? If you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail, right?
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I also think that you never, any information you get, it's not dud information. Like, even if it's not directly relevant to you now, I don't know if you feel like this. Sometimes I hear things and I'm like, oh, that's really great. But I didn't really think about it. And then, like, 3 months later, that exact scenario will come up. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah, no, that's such a useful piece of information that I picked up, I don't know, 3 months ago, that I didn't
Oh
realize that I would
gosh.
need. It's
Yeah.
never dull information. Like, the more, even if you get, that's not me, that's good information.
Mm-hmm.
You know that that's not you, or that's not what you would do, or whatever it is. So I think that curious minds are So important. If you're not curious, then I don't know that you should start something, because you have to be curious.
You have to be curious, but oh gosh, yeah, you have to be curious. You have to be open, right? And you have to be
Mhm.
receptive. And even, in one of the businesses that James and I run together, we were talking about referrals, right?
Mm.
This morning, and we were talking about some of the earlier on referrals, and I'm like, oh man, but it took us forever to get them the results that they were after, and da, da, da. And James was saying to me, you know what? That's we have to ask them. We have to,
Yeah.
we have to ask them, and it doesn't mean
Right.
that they thought that it took us forever. According to our standards today, that did take forever. But at that time, we were attracting clients who were taking forever, who were willing to take forever. So being curious and asking them, hey, what do you believe works? What do you believe didn't work? And that curiosity, coming from that curiosity, like you said, rather than from fear of the
Mm.
responses, you can unlock some of the most precious gems with that.
Yeah, and that's really key. Like, I know we're fearful to ask for things. We're fearful to ask our partners or whoever to really just lean on us and support us. We're fearful to ask anyone really about feedback in case
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to give you one, or they don't want to give you good feedback. And it's so like fearful. And it's like, actually, if they do say to you, listen, you could have done X better, that's something you know. And that's something you can utilize. You go, okay, great. It's taking the personality, like the personal element out of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think men do it better than women. And I know that's a sweeping generalization, but they really do. We talked about this as well. Like, men will, if something goes wrong, men will look at a process and blame the process. Women will go, what did I do wrong? We'll take it all very personally. And I'm not saying that's a blanket response.
Yeah.
But what I am trying to say is that there's an element of detachment from this. It's like looking at it from a different angle and going, okay, that didn't work for them. What I thought worked didn't work for them. So that's got me thinking, how do I move forward on this? And that takes time. That really does take time. But I think it's, as you say, it's golden. It's that golden nugget that is almost better than those raving reviews that you get, because you really do up your game.
Oh my goodness, you do. A couple of thoughts come to me here, Rachana, and just bear with me here. I'm gonna look it up. Yesterday, I was in a mood for James was in Idaho for the last few days, and yesterday Ella was at school, and we had a beautiful breeze and sunshine. And as you know, we had this storm, so we had this beautiful ravine behind our house, but the storm pushed all these giant boulders and rocks, so we
Right.
had people working above us to
Okay.
set it all up in place. But I love the sound of machinery. I don't know,
Right.
because it's like it's the sound of progress to me,
Okay.
it's a sign of improvement, and I love growth. But I love going into the woods too, so
Yeah.
I think I like a healthy mix of both. But I was working, and I was in the mood for Dolly Parton yesterday. So I had Dolly Parton in the background, and there's this song called "Just Because I'm Woman." Just because I'm a woman. Do you know that song?
Yeah. Yeah. I do.
And I was listening to that, and she sings, "My mistakes are no worse than yours just because I'm a woman." I don't know. I don't remember the
Yeah.
lyrics. In what you are talking about now, I think it is engraved in us to 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 get judged for our mistakes. So asking for feedback, or having that freedom to ask for feedback, it is harder for us
Mm.
than men, right? Because, as she says, the woman you thought I'd be, yes, I've made my mistakes, but listen and understand, my mistakes are no worse than yours just because I'm a woman. So it's clearly the judgment is coming from a man, right?
Yeah.
So women, there's a reason this woman wrote this song. I never heard of it. I just heard it yesterday for the first time.
Oh, okay.
And it resonated with me. I'm like, yeah, this is how we're wired. We're wired to fear judgment from
Yeah.
others for mistakes that we make. So if I survey people, it takes tremendous amount of courage for a
Right.
woman to ask for feedback.
Right.
So if you're afraid to ask for feedback, please know it's normal. We don't take that lightly because we are wired to fear it.
That's right. You know, I think about my son and my daughter and how different they are with feedback. And I really have to tiptoe around my daughter to give her any form of constructive criticism. Whereas my son, I can really just deliver it and he's fine. And it's so apparent. There was, you know, I think that they were raised pretty similarly, but it's inbuilt. I feel like we take things more personally. We're judged a lot earlier, I think, be it your looks, be it whether you're good at something. You know, I feel like that judgment comes, or we're certainly more aware of it. Maybe I don't know the reasons, but yeah, I love that. We do struggle with asking for what we want.
It was right, because even if I want feedback, I may be afraid that I'm going to be alone
That's right.
as I recover from your feedback, right? So it is something that we have to grow through. We have to, especially in entrepreneurship. Feedback is always going to be there, whether we hear it or not. The other person is already thinking it, so we have to grow through that process of actually asking for it, receiving it, and not feeling alone in it.
And I love that. And I'm going to ask, this is going on from that. Like, what if you know that the feedback you receive, the support that you desperately want, probably isn't going to be forthcoming?
Mm.
But it's so strong inside you, and you do all the things we just said. You know, you have those open conversations and you speak their language and you meet them where they're at and you address their fears. You do all that and it's a flat no.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you go from there? Like, how do you, because you inside, you know that you, if you don't do this, that there will be something missing in your life and you will get to 100 and you'll be like, oh, wish I'd done it. Is that something that you prepare yourself for? I know I certainly have, knowing that I won't necessarily get the results that I want, but I have to go through the process. And even just making myself go through that process, I see as a win,
Mm.
because where I would have avoided it, I'm actually facing it head on. And you just go for it anyway without their support. Is that, you know, if someone's in that position, if someone's listening and they're like, yeah, that's exactly my position. I know what the answer is going to be. I know, you know, I can do all this prepping, I can do everything, but I know what the answer is going to be. What
Yeah.
is there some golden nuggets that you think someone should take?
Yeah, here's something. I started running 13. Ella was 5 months old. And I love running, man. I just love it. I just put on my shoes and I just go. It's so freeing and liberating. And I remember one day I came back and I was, and mind you, I stayed at home with Ella for 2 years, and James was the only one working. And so he was very much in the job mentality,
Mm,
and because he needed to bring a paycheck home, and it was financially was a stretchy time
yeah.
for us as a family. And I remember I came home to him and I said, I'm going to start a blog. This was when blogs were huge, right?
Yeah.
Blogs were like the thing that you do if you even knew how to write a blog. But like, I'm going to start a blog. I'm going to call it Running Through Motherhood. And I had all these great ideas
Love
about
it.
it.
Yeah.
And like I didn't know these things, but I'm like, I'm going to write it to another mother who wants to, like, I was describing my ideal
Mm,
audience, which I didn't know that I was doing that. For another mother who wants to lose weight and be healthy and be the role model for her kid, da, 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 da. And I was so excited. And he thought it was a silly idea, right? He thought it was not a good idea. It was, and that deflated me, right? And then last year I was sitting at Funnel Hacking Live, which is ClickFunnels' biggest event of the year. And there was a woman that was talking on the stage, and she made $2 million in her business. And she had a similar story. And she said, I forgot what kind of business she started. She was like teaching people how to do some digital templates or something. And she said, and I came to my husband, just like my husband has this engineer mind. And I told him I'm going to do this. And he was like, that's a stupid idea. She's like, and I did it anyway. And I did it anyway. And now my stupid idea retired my husband. And obviously he came around, da da da. And so her husband was exactly where he needed to be. My husband was exactly where he needed to be, right? It was me. I'm the one who gave up, and she's the one who didn't give up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the golden nugget is you have no idea what kind of support is on the other side. And I'm married to a very supportive man. This guy, anything I say, he's like, okay, how can we make it happen? But this is, you don't know what kind of support you're going to receive from the other person. But
No.
it's you. You have to
Right.
believe in you.
Yeah.
You
And
have to push you.
that's a great story, Alma, and it's a great illustration because I think that it reminds me of, it's also, my husband's different to me in terms of how he's a physician, so it's that the minds are slightly different. And I know that he, when I said, well, I'd like to do some consulting and coaching, he said, was like, oh, why don't you do this? He's really supportive. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And it was like, no, this is what I want to do. And I know he wasn't all in initially. I mean, he was like, yeah, go do what you like. But I think he was thinking, well, we'll see how long this lasts. And part of that is recognizing, as you said, your own need. And if it's something, it's going, well, you know what? They're not going to understand. I'm talking to someone that does not understand where I'm at now, and they may never understand where I'm at now. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. I'm asking the wrong person for validation on, because I want them to support me. And they can still support you without necessarily thinking it's a great idea. Now, if it's going to impact your finances and all the rest of it, then that's going to sort of hurt. So I think the key is, if it's strong enough, it's trusting that gut and going for it anyway. But again, I really like the idea of putting a timeline to it. So,
Absolutely. But be your own cheerleader. Very often, people just don't support us because they're afraid. They have their own fears. And if we depend on how they feel, how fearful they are on a scale of 0 to 10,
right.
if we depend on their fear scale, we're gonna be all over the place. We're gonna be thrown around, and we're not gonna know what what kind of support we're going to get. We have to support ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We have to say, you know what, I appreciate you saying that that's a silly idea. You're probably coming from a place of fear, and I will do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it anyway, and let's set a timeline for it. And right, let's do it the right way,
That's
because
right. And
I did it the wrong way. I know that
yeah,
I
well, I
completely own
think we all do it the wrong way
the
to
first
begin
time,
with.
right?
The other thing that's really important is what I've learned through the years is that you prep for that. As it's like you're pitching to someone. You wouldn't walk into a pitch without any prep, right? You get your audience. So, like you say, James or my husband, right? You would prep for it, and you would say, well, you'd give them examples. You tell them, well, this has got a similar thing and that's doing really well. You would really prepare. So it's the same way. You have to alleviate their fears. You have to meet them where they're at, and you have to speak their language.
Exactly.
And so that's where you go with it. But yes, I think there is a point where if it's that strong inside you, you do it. But yeah, give yourself that timeline, and don't expect them to be, woohoo, I've got your back. They've already told
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah. And you never know. They may have you back with one idea, and the second, and the third, and the seventh, and the 12th idea. And then by the time you get to the 14th idea, they're like, I can't do this anymore, right?
That's right.
Really understanding where they're coming from, but being prepared. And again, I think I've mentioned this, and or me mentioned this before. So we're not speaking from reading from a book, right? This is really more personal
Yeah.
experiences
Yeah.
as we embarked on this entrepreneurial journey.
That's right. And I think, we've worked with many women in this situation, there's no hard and fast answer. If there was, everyone would be doing it. But really, we've both been in a situation where we feel unrest and we feel like there's something more. And how do we approach that? And are we silly to give up what we have for something that may be a pie in the sky? I
Yeah.
don't know if that's a US term, actually. A dream. And actually there are ways, like we said, the first time I did it wrong. There are ways, if this conversation can help any of you approach that conversation with your other halves, be able to mitigate those fears that they hold and get one step closer to doing something, to being a team, that team that you desperately want, then that's great. That's the goal of this whole series. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that the main points, to just recap, are, as you rightly said, meet them where they're at, understand their fears, speak their language, so prepare, and give them that timeline, give some finite idea of okay, I'm not going to continue this and make us bankrupt. I'm going to, I'd like your support for this time. Let's see how I do for this time. And
Hmm.
when you give someone that option, it's hard for them to say, "No, I'm not going to do that," because you can say, well, listen, if it doesn't work out, I can go back. I can
Yeah.
do this. I'm not burning bridges, but I do really want to do this. So again, it's not an all or nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And engage them, right? Bring them into your celebrations,
that's right.
bring them into these little micro milestones that you're making. Because as long as your loved ones know that they're not being shut out and that they're not being replaced, they will do anything for you.
Hmm.
Because your successes are their successes. And as long as they know that you're in this together, they will join you on this journey. Because if you love somebody and you truly believe that they love you, they're not committed to you losing, because nobody wants to be in a relationship with a loser, right?
Right.
Because you don't respect a loser. So your loved ones are not here to have you lose. They're simply speaking from their fears.
That's right. That's great. We would love to hear from you, especially on your biggest fears, like regarding your dreams and how you tackle this with loved ones. So please do reach out to us and let us know what they are. And if you have any other comments or questions that you would like answered.
Yes. Yes, we can't wait to hear them and address them.